You know, there are some memories that are so bright, so clear. They feel more like a scene from a movie you keep replaying than something that actually happened. For me, one of those bright, shiny memories is about the fund, my college fund. It wasn't just money, it was my future. It was the cornerstone of the life I was going to build. And the whole thing, the very idea of it, was built on a lie. A lie my parents told me for nearly 2 decades. Let me take you back to the beginning. My parents, bless their hearts, were always very proud of being responsible parents. They weren't flashy. They drove reliable, practical cars, shopped at sensible stores, and always emphasized the importance of saving. They made a point of telling me, from the time I was old enough to understand the concept of a piggy bank, that they were putting money away for my education. Every birthday, every holiday, a significant chunk of any gift money I received went straight into the fund. They even had a little laminated card which they kept in their important documents folder, with the projected growth and the goal, the university of my dreams. My mother, Sarah, was the chief accountant of this dream. She'd sit me down once a year, usually around my birthday, and show me the statements. "Look, honey," she'd say, tapping the neat columns of numbers with a manicured finger. "This is your hard work. This is going to open every door for you." My dad, Mark, would just beam, his arm around her. "We're not like those other parents, sweetie. We're planning ahead. You won't have the stress of massive loans." Hearing that, having that reassurance, was everything. It shaped my high school years. While my friends were stressing about SAT scores and where they could afford to go, I was only worrying about where I wanted to go. I had the privilege of focusing on my grades, on extracurriculars, on becoming the person those selective universities wanted, all because I believed the financial aspect was sorted. I set my sights on NYU, the dream, the big one. I wanted to study film production. I used to print out pictures of the campus, of the dorm rooms, and pin them to my vision board. Every dollar, every sacrifice my parents made felt like it was invested directly into that vision. They told me the goal was $80,000, and I watched that number climb steadily, year after year. Then came the year I turned 16. That summer, something shifted. A tiny, almost imperceptible crack appeared in their carefully constructed facade. My parents, the ones who always took sensible road trips to national parks or stayed in modest coastal rentals, suddenly announced a major vacation. Not just a week somewhere local, but a full 2-week, all-inclusive luxury cruise through the Mediterranean. And I mean luxury. Think 5-star cabins, private balconies, excursions to historical sites with private guides. This was absolutely not their style. They were always too practical, too frugal for something this extravagant. "Wow, that's expensive," I remember saying, trying to sound excited but honestly just confused. My mother laughed it off. "Oh, we got a fantastic last-minute deal, sweetie. Plus your father got a big bonus this quarter. We deserved a little splurge, didn't we?" The bonus explanation seemed plausible enough. My dad was a regional manager for a mid-sized supply company. He had been with them for years, but the change in attitude was jarring. Before they left, they bought entirely new wardrobes. My mom, who usually wore clothes until they frayed, was suddenly sporting designer sunglasses and a brand new Louis Vuitton travel tote. A real one, not a knockoff. The trip itself was insane. They sent me pictures daily, picture-perfect sunsets on the deck, my dad in a tuxedo at the captain's dinner, My mom sipping champagne in front of the Colosseum in Rome. They looked like different people, carefree, indulgent, almost young again. I was genuinely happy for them, of course. They worked hard. But a nagging voice, the small, annoying voice of doubt, kept whispering, how did they really afford this? It wasn't until they came back, tanned and rested and carrying expensive Italian leather goods, that I started to truly investigate. I was cleaning up the living room a few weeks later. My mom had been going through some receipts and papers. I found a crumpled bank statement tucked deep inside one of the cruise brochures. It wasn't the cruise bill or a credit card statement. It was a statement from the Aurora Savings and Investment Fund. My heart dropped into my stomach. That was the official name of my college fund account. The balance line was what made me freeze. It wasn't the $60,000 I thought it should be at that point, given the annual updates and projections. The balance wasn't even close. It was $3,412.18. I stared at the paper, my blood turning to ice. $3,412.18. This had to be a mistake, a different account, a placeholder. I frantically checked the account number. It was it. The fund my future. Gone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost tore the paper. I quickly smoothed it out and shoved it back into the brochure, my mind racing 1,000 miles a minute. Did they transfer it? Did they open a new one? Did they use it? Why? The logical side of my brain screamed, there's a simple explanation. Ask them. But the cold, hard number on the paper, combined with the memory of their unbelievably extravagant vacation, created a terrifying scenario in my mind, and I couldn't face that truth yet. I decided I needed more proof. I needed to see the activity, the withdrawals. I needed to see where the $80,000 had gone. The next few weeks, I lived under the suffocating weight of this terrifying secret. I was a spy in my own home, watching my parents, who were blissfully unaware. They were still talking about their cruise, showing their souvenir photos, making me feel guilty for not being happier for them. The opportunity came a month later. My mother was sick with a bad flu and my father was away on a short business trip. She asked me to fetch an important document from the safe in their closet, the very closet that held the important documents folder. My hands trembled as I opened the safe. Inside, I found the folder. I pulled out the laminated card showing the projected growth, a total fantasy now. Then I found the real statements, not the single crumpled one, but a stack of them. I started shuffling through, looking at the dates. There it was, a single massive withdrawal, dated 3 months before their Mediterranean cruise. The transaction description was vague, internal transfer/investment reallocation. The amount, however, was not vague at all. It was a withdrawal of $76,587.82. My breath hitched. The remaining balance was exactly $3,412.18. Tears sprang to my eyes. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a simple error. This was a calculated action. They had emptied my entire life savings, the entire foundation of my future, just 3 months before their giant, unbelievable luxury trip. The connection was too damning to ignore. I felt a cold rage settle over me, heavier and more dangerous than any sadness. They didn't just spend the money. They lied to me for months afterward, showing me the fake laminated card, smiling and talking about my future with such convincing sincerity. They let me work my tail off, study, and apply for the most expensive universities, all while knowing I had no way to pay for them. I didn't confront them immediately. The shock was too great. I put the papers back, closed the safe, and walked out of the room. I felt physically ill. I didn't get the document my mother asked for. I just told her I couldn't find it. I spent the next 2 weeks researching scholarships, loans, and financial aid, desperately trying to construct a safety net out of thin air. I didn't want to rely on them anymore. I couldn't, but the silence was killing me. The sight of them, happily watching TV, talking about their next small, sensible vacation, was a constant screaming insult. I knew I couldn't keep this secret. The explosion was coming. It had to. And it happened on the day I got my acceptance letter from NYU. I opened the thin, elegant envelope, a lump of pure excitement and dread in my throat. Congratulations, Maya, on your acceptance to the Tisch School of the Arts. I had done it. I had achieved the dream they helped me build. I walked into the living room, acceptance letter in hand. My parents looked up, smiling wide, anticipating the triumphant news. I got in, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. NYU, I got accepted. My mom screamed with delight. My dad jumped up and hugged me tight. I knew it. We are so proud of you, honey. This calls for a celebration. And in that moment of their genuine, unadulterated joy for my success, the betrayal felt so sharp, so cruel, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The rage boiled over. How am I supposed to pay for it? I demanded, my voice shaking. How? With the $3,412 left in the Aurora Fund, their smiles froze. Their faces went utterly pale. The silence that followed was the heaviest thing I have ever felt. My mother's eyes darted nervously to my father. He looked like he had just been hit by a truck. The air was thick with the dust of their collapsing lie. My father slowly sat back down, rubbing his temples. Maya, we need to talk. No, I cut him off, dropping the acceptance letter on the coffee table. You don't get to talk. You get to explain. Tell me where the $76,000 went. And that, my friend, is where the confession began. And believe me, the truth was even more shocking than the theft. The silence in the room after my question was deafening. It stretched out, heavy and suffocating, punctuated only by the shallow, rapid breathing of my parents. They looked like two criminals caught red-handed, their faces stripped bare of their usual parental confidence. My mother, Sarah, was the first one to break. She started crying, a desperate, hysterical kind of sobbing that didn't evoke pity, but rather a cold, hard resentment in me. She reached for my hand, but I instantly recoiled. The touch felt tainted. Maya, please, honey, she pleaded through her tears. Don't look at us like that. We were going to fix it. We are going to fix it. Fix what, Mom? I asked, my voice dangerously calm, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Fix the fact that you stole my future? That you showed me fake statements for months and let me chase a dream you knew was impossible? Just tell me, where did the $76,000 go? My father, Mark, finally cleared his throat, his face a mask of shame and fear. He avoided my eyes, staring at the acceptance letter on the coffee table as if it were a grenade about to explode. It wasn't a reallocation, Maya, he mumbled, his voice hoarse. It was us. We took it out. For the cruise. I felt a dizzying lurch in my stomach. Hearing them confirm it, just saying the words out loud was worse than seeing the numbers on the page. The cruise? I repeated, my volume rising. The luxury cruise? The one where you posted daily pictures of yourselves drinking champagne and touring Europe? You blew my entire college fund, the money you spent 20 years telling me was sacred, on a 2-week vacation. It wasn't just the cruise, my mother wailed, throwing her hands up defensively. It was everything. The new clothes, the private excursions, the leather goods. It was the last perfect thing we had. It was our emergency. I stared at her, utterly baffled. Your emergency? What kind of emergency requires draining your daughter's education fund for a luxury holiday? That's when my father finally looked at me, and what he said next shattered the last remnants of my trust in them. We needed the cruise, Maya, he confessed, the words spilling out in a rush of desperation. Because we were getting divorced. I blinked. Once, twice. The confession was so far out of the scope of what I had prepared myself for, the theft, the lies, that it short-circuited my brain. What? We were planning to file the papers, my dad continued, the dam broken. Things had been terrible between your mother and me for over a year. Constant fighting. We were miserable. The only thing we agreed on was that we didn't want to hurt you until you were safely off to college. My mother interjected, wiping her eyes fiercely. We thought, before we completely blew up your life and separated, we deserved one last perfect memory as a family. One last beautiful, expensive, memorable trip where we could pretend everything was fine. A Hail Mary pass, maybe, to see if we could save it, but mostly a final glorious farewell to our marriage. And we didn't have any savings left, Maya. The house needed repairs, the car broke down, and we were living paycheck to paycheck, trying to maintain the responsible image for you. So you decided to finance your romantic farewell tour using my college fund? I asked, the sheer audacity of it making me feel lightheaded. You sacrificed my future, the thing you claimed was the most important, for a temporary distraction from your failing marriage. It wasn't a sacrifice. It was a loan, my father insisted, standing up, trying to inject some authority into his pathetic defense. We were going to pay it back. I got a promotion coming up. It's been delayed, but it's coming. We were going to replace every penny before you needed it for the first tuition payment. A loan you never told me about, I shot back. A loan you hid with fake paperwork. You let me write my acceptance speech, Mom. You let me calculate my financial aid package. This isn't a loan. This is theft. You stole from me to buy yourselves a 2-week lie. The argument escalated quickly. My mother tried to shift the focus to their pain, their suffering. Don't you understand our desperation, Maya? We were miserable. We worked so hard to give you everything. Everything? I scoffed. You gave me the illusion of everything. You gave me a future built on sand. You know what this means, right? NYU is gone. The reality of the situation slapped me across the face, cold and unforgiving. NYU's tuition was astronomical. Without that $80,000, I was dead in the water. No amount of financial aid would cover the gap. My dad slumped back onto the couch. We know, honey. We're so sorry. We know. But look, maybe you could go to community college for a year or two. We can save up fast, I swear. You can transfer later. It'll just be a slight delay. The word delay hit me like a physical blow. A slight delay, a change of plans. To them, it was a minor logistical hiccup in their grand drama. To me, it was the crushing of my dreams, the annihilation of every goal I had worked towards since I was 12. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No delay. You stripped me of my choices. NYU's film program doesn't accept transfers easily, you know that. This isn't just about money, it's about opportunity. I looked at them, their desperate, pleading faces. The pain of realizing the depth of their selfishness was almost physically overwhelming. They hadn't seen me as their daughter with a future to protect. They saw me as a side character in their miserable marriage, and my fund as a convenient, secret ATM to fund their escape fantasy. "And what about the divorce?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Are you still doing it?" My parents exchanged a glance that was, surprisingly, not one of shared guilt, but of fragile connection. "No," my mother said softly. "The cruise, it helped. Getting away, being forced to talk, seeing ourselves outside of this house. We decided to try therapy. We decided we needed to rebuild." "Oh, I see," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "So you destroyed my future and my security, and in return, your marriage got a second chance. You bought your relationship with my hard-earned college money?" The irony was venomous. They were asking me to be happy that their relationship was salvaged, while I was left to deal with the wreckage of my life. I grabbed my car keys. I couldn't stay in that house a second longer. The air was poisonous with their lies and my shattered trust. "Where are you going?" my father asked, panic creeping into his voice. "Away from you," I spat out. "You wanted a last perfect memory? Congratulations, this is mine." The moment I realized my parents are nothing but selfish, reckless liars, I walked out the door, the sound of my mother's renewed sobs echoing behind me. I drove until the streets were unfamiliar, pulling over under the cold glare of a street lamp. I opened the NYU acceptance letter again, reading the beautiful, promising words. It felt like a cruel joke. I had the talent, the drive, the acceptance. I had everything except the one thing I was promised and the one thing they stole. It was just the beginning of the fallout. The immediate consequence was the loss of NYU. But the deeper, more profound damage was the realization that my entire childhood, the foundation of my relationship with my parents, had been built on a decades-long financial performance art. And now that the curtain had dropped, I was left with the horrible, messy truth. And I still had to figure out what to do with the $3,412.18 they left me. I didn't go back home that night. I drove straight to my best friend Chloe's apartment. When I showed up on her doorstep at 2 a.m, shaking and incoherent, she knew something catastrophic had happened. I didn't tell her everything immediately. How do you even begin to explain that your parents traded your college education for a 2-week party? But I told her enough. The money was gone. NYU was over, and the people I trusted the most had betrayed me. Chloe was incredible. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened, and then she helped me organize. She gave me her spare couch for the next 2 weeks and a laptop to start the desperate, soul-crushing work of Plan B. My relationship with my parents immediately entered a phase of frigid, transactional silence. I went home only to shower and grab clothes, and I would leave before they woke up or after they went to bed. When we were forced to be in the same room, I spoke only in monosyllables. I refused to eat dinner with them. I physically couldn't stand to watch them share a meal, knowing their salvaged marriage was funded by the wreckage of my life. They tried, in their own pathetic ways, to make amends. My mother baked my favorite cookies. I threw them away. My father tried to engage me in a discussion about a cheaper state school. I simply handed him a detailed printout of the tuition and declared, "You'll be paying the full cost." Every cent, plus the $80,000 you stole. They kept repeating the loan narrative. Maya, we are trying to pay it back. We're making sacrifices. What were these sacrifices? My father sold his fishing gear, a hobby he engaged in twice a year. My mother returned the designer sunglasses she bought on the cruise. These gestures felt like an absolute slap in the face. They were talking about paying me back the money needed for a world-class education, with the $300 they got for a used fishing rod. The most infuriating part was their constant, tone-deaf optimism. "Look, Maya," my father said one evening, cornering me in the kitchen, "I've started driving for a ride-share service on the weekends. That's extra income. If we both cut back, we can pool $1,000 a month. You'll have a great chunk of money by next summer. $1,000 a month. To replace $80,000. It would take them over 6.5 years just to replenish the principal amount. I needed the full amount in 3 months. Their solution was proof that they still did not grasp the reality of the situation they created. They were trying to solve a catastrophic problem with pocket change, clinging to the belief that sheer effort, rather than actual wealth, could fix their terrible decision. "Dad," I said, leaning against the counter, suddenly feeling decades older than him, "I needed that money for September. It is now May. Your $1,000 a month will get me $4,000 by the time I am supposed to be in New York. You realize that, right? You took away my opportunity, not just my savings." He deflated instantly, his shoulders slumping. "We know, Maya. We are truly sorry. Sorry doesn't get me into NYU, Dad." I started looking for alternatives, a frantic, desperate scavenger hunt for education. I had to ditch the dream of NYU. It was too expensive, too far out of reach. I applied to local community colleges, state universities, and started filling out every scholarship application I could find. My GPA was excellent, my extracurriculars were impressive, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could bridge the chasm of $80,000. I ended up settling for the cheapest option, a local state university, State Tech. It wasn't Tisch School of the Arts. It didn't have the vibrant city life, the networking opportunities, or the specialized film program I dreamed of. It was a utilitarian, practical choice, and it felt like a monumental failure. The application fee for State Tech was one of the few things I paid for with the remaining $3,412.18 they left me. The irony wasn't lost on me. They robbed me of my dream school and inadvertently funded my backup plan with the leftovers. The announcement of my Plan B caused a new, more irritating rift. "State Tech is a good school, Maya," my mother tried to assure me, attempting to sound supportive. "It's close to home. You can live here, save on rent, and we can really focus on paying you back." I saw right through it. They weren't happy for the education. They were happy for the convenience. They wanted me close so they could keep up appearances, try to repair our broken family, and perhaps ease their crippling guilt. "I will not be living at home," I stated flatly. "I found a part-time job waiting tables starting next month, and I am putting a deposit down on a shared apartment near campus with Chloe." This sparked another fight, louder and more chaotic than the first confrontation. "You're running away," my mother accused, tears welling up again. "You're punishing us." "Yes, Mom," I said, staring her down. "I am. And I am also protecting myself. You proved you cannot be trusted with my money, my future, or my best interests. Living with you would mean relying on you, and I am done relying on people who prioritize their romantic getaway over their child's education." My father stepped in, trying to mediate. "We just want to help. We want to fix this, Maya. Let us pay for your books, your tuition." "No," I interrupted firmly. "You will not pay for my tuition directly. You will pay for the loan you took from me. Every payment you make will go directly into the Aurora Fund account. I will use the remaining $3,000 I have, take out student loans, and work my way through state tech. I want nothing to do with your help that comes with hidden strings and potential future betrayal." This rigid boundary infuriated them. They wanted to be the heroes of my recovery story, the generous parents who fixed their mistake. I refused to give them that easy redemption. I was forcing them to face the ugly reality. They were debtors, and I was their highly disappointed creditor. The summer was torturous. I worked constantly, saved every penny, and started packing my life into boxes, preparing for my escape to the shared apartment. My parents, meanwhile, continued their desperate, futile attempts at reconciliation. They tried to buy my affection with small, cheap gifts, a new backpack, a gift card to a bookstore, all funded by their new ride-share gig. It all culminated 3 days before I was due to move out. I walked into the kitchen to find my mother on the phone, her voice hushed, but clearly agitated. I overheard fragments of the conversation. "No, you can't tell her. What? She's still so angry." "He'll get it next month, I promise. He just needs 1 more week of driving." I froze by the doorway. Who was she talking about? What was she promising? I waited until she hung up, her face flushed with stress. "Who was that?" I asked, folding my arms. She jumped, clearly startled. "Oh, Maya. Just a friend. Asking about the new car we're thinking about getting." I walked closer. My eyes narrowed. "No, Mom. That was not a friend. That was a serious conversation. Who are you promising money to? Is this about the $80,000? She started to stammer, avoiding my gaze. "It's nothing, honey, just some old debt your father had." "Stop lying to me," I yelled, my voice cracking with renewed betrayal. "I am done with your secrets." "After what you did, you owe me the complete, unadulterated truth. Tell me, right now, is there another part of the story you haven't told me?" My mother's composure crumbled. She slumped against the counter, defeated. She looked genuinely terrified, not of my anger, but of the secret she was trying to protect. "Maya, please promise you won't hate us," she whispered, her hands shaking as she gestured toward the locked filing cabinet in the corner of the dining room. The vacation, the money, it was only part of it. The other part is complicated. Your father didn't just spend the money. He tried to replace it immediately with an investment. My blood ran cold. An investment? The word smelled instantly of desperation and reckless risk. "What investment?" I demanded. "A cryptocurrency scheme," she confessed, her voice barely audible. "He thought it was a sure thing." He used the last of the fund money, the bulk of the $76,000, to buy into this new aggressive coin. He was trying to double the money in 2 months to pay you back before September. But the coin collapsed. He lost everything. My mind reeled. They didn't just spend the money on the cruise. They gambled it away, trying to cover their tracks, and then lied about the entire sequence of events. The cruise was just the distraction. The real crime was the reckless, panicked gamble that ensured the money was irretrievable. My mother's confession about the cryptocurrency gamble didn't register as a shock. It registered as a sickening confirmation of their total and complete lack of judgment. The theft for the cruise was selfish. The attempt to replace it with a high-risk, desperate investment was reckless. It proved that they hadn't learned their lesson. They had merely swapped one irresponsible action for a far more devastating one. I didn't yell this time. I was too exhausted, too deeply disappointed for rage. "So," I stated, the word heavy and flat. The cruise was the cover story. "You spent about $4,000 on your romantic farewell, and then, in a blind panic, Dad took the other $72,000 and threw it into a sketchy digital hole, hoping to be a hero." My mother nodded miserably, tears streaming down her face again. "He thought he could surprise you, Maya. He thought he could get the money back, pay for NYU, and we would tell you about the divorce later, as planned. It was all supposed to be separate. But the coin, Quantum Leap, crashed a week after they launched. It went from nearly $1 to $0 in 24 hours. The realization hit me. I hadn't just been robbed by selfish parents. I had been destroyed by desperation. They weren't calculated villains. They were panicked amateurs who tried to solve a small mistake, spending a few thousand on the cruise, by making a catastrophic one, gambling the remaining $72,000. "Who were you just talking to on the phone, Mom?" I pressed, ignoring her pleas for forgiveness. Was that one of his investment buddies? "Is someone else trying to pressure you for money?" "It was the therapist," she admitted, hanging her head. We haven't paid them in 2 months. Your father missed a driving shift because his car broke down again, and now the therapist is threatening to drop us. He says we have to prioritize our repair, Maya, otherwise we'll relapse, and the whole marriage will fall apart." I stepped back, laughing a dry, bitter laugh. "Unbelievable. You are literally prioritizing the survival of your marriage, the thing that caused all of this, over paying back the money you stole from your daughter. You're trying to save your relationship on a foundation of debt and lies." The new revelation made my plan to move out feel even more urgent and necessary. I realized that my father's meager $1,000 a month repayment plan was not just slow. It was constantly being undermined by their need to fund their own personal recovery. Their debt to me was always going to be secondary to their debt to their therapist, their landlord, or their utility company. That night, I started moving my things without permission. I called Chloe and told her I was coming early. I didn't care about their protests anymore. I packed my boxes, my textbooks, and the remaining $3,000 in my account. My father came home late, finding me loading the last box of my books into my beaten-up borrowed car. He looked defeated. "Maya, please," he begged, walking toward me. "Don't do this. Let's talk. We can get through this as a family." "We are not a family, Dad," I said, leaning against the car door. "We are a debtor and a creditor. And a creditor doesn't live with the people who just committed financial fraud against them. You gambled my future away. You didn't just spend the money, you wiped it out completely. Now your only job is to pay me back." I pulled out a printed formal document. I had spent hours drawing it up with Chloe's paralegal cousin. "This is a repayment agreement," I informed him, pushing the paper into his chest. "It states that you and Mom acknowledge the debt of $76,587.82. You will be depositing $1,200 every month into the Aurora Fund account. No excuses, no delays. If you miss a payment, I will have the legal right to file a claim against your assets." He stared at the document, his face aghast. You're suing your own parents?" "I'm protecting myself," I corrected him. "You forced my hand." "I have a life to build, and you have to be held accountable. Sign it." He didn't sign it immediately. He stood there holding the paper like a condemnation, his eyes pleading for a scrap of the little girl who used to idolize him. But that girl was dead, killed by his selfishness and irresponsibility. I got into the car, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't look back. The house, usually a symbol of stability, now looked like a mausoleum of broken promises. I started state tech the following month. It was everything I expected: mediocre, crowded, and utterly devoid of the magic I had anticipated at NYU. I took classes in filmmaking, but the equipment was decades old, and the curriculum was generic. I worked 3 shifts a week at the restaurant, often falling asleep over my textbooks. I was physically and emotionally drained. I received the first few payments, $1,200, right on time. My parents were clearly terrified of the repayment agreement. They continued to text me sporadic, guilt-ridden messages, which I mostly ignored. The most bizarre and ultimately most damaging part of the whole saga wasn't the theft itself, but the way they tried to twist the narrative after I left. One Thanksgiving, I reluctantly agreed to meet them at a diner, away from the toxic environment of the house. They used the entire hour to justify themselves, and worse, try to paint me as the problem. "Maya, you need to forgive us," my mother insisted, reaching across the table. "You're holding on to so much anger." "It's not healthy. It's not anger," I replied calmly. "It's boundaries. I'm holding you accountable for ruining my dreams." My father sighed, leaning back. "But Maya, look at the big picture. We took a risk, yes, but we also saved our marriage. And you're getting a good education. You didn't have to take out those massive loans. We're paying you back, and you're debt-free. In the end, everything worked out, didn't it?" I put my fork down. That was their final, ultimate insult. They truly believed that because I was currently financially stable, thanks to the student loans I took out and the job I worked, their actions were somehow forgivable. They believed the end, their salvaged marriage and my state university enrollment, justified the horrific means. "No, Dad," I said, shaking my head. "Everything did not work out. You forced me to take the path of least resistance instead of the path of my greatest potential. You didn't save your marriage for me. You saved it at the expense of me. And you still don't get that." I stood up, leaving the uneaten food on the table. I realized then that my relationship with them wasn't just damaged. It was fundamentally broken by their inability to acknowledge the full extent of their selfishness. The money could be repaid, but the years of trust and the lost opportunity for NYU, that was gone forever. And they had to live with the knowledge that they were the reason I was working until 2 a.m. instead of pursuing my dreams. Life at State Tech became a grind. It wasn't the inspiring artistic hub of NYU. It was a factory for average degrees. I was surviving, not thriving. My film classes felt like watching paint dry compared to the dynamic curriculum I'd planned for. But the routine, work, study, sleep, was a necessary distraction from the cold truth of my situation. The repayment agreement worked, mostly. every month on the 15th, $1,200 would silently appear in the Aurora Fund account. It was the only interaction I had with my parents that didn't involve an argument or a guilt trip. The mounting payments were a tangible symbol of their accountability, a slow but steady stream trying to fill the ocean they had emptied. But my parents still hadn't completely stopped trying to manipulate the narrative. They would occasionally send me small gifts with notes attached. We saw this backpack, and it reminded us of the beautiful cruise. Thinking of you and how proud we are of your strength. The cruise. Always the cruise. They had successfully woven that 2-week indulgence into the tapestry of my life's biggest tragedy, trying to make it sound like a painful but ultimately necessary stepping stone. 2 years into state tech, just as the Aurora Fund balance had climbed back up to around $30,000, a new, completely unexpected bombshell dropped. It came not from them, but from my father's younger sister, Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol and I were close, but she'd been out of the loop, living overseas. She called me one evening, distressed. "Maya, your mother called me today," she said, her voice tight with anger. "She was asking for money." She said your father's promotion finally came through, but he'd spent the signing bonus paying off their personal debts, not paying you back, and now they're facing foreclosure. I sat up straight in my dorm chair. Foreclosure? My parents' house? "Wait, Aunt Carol, what debts?" I asked, a wave of familiar nausea washing over me. They told me they were focused on paying me back and saving for their retirement. "Retirement?" Carol scoffed. "Maya, sweetie, your dad didn't just lose your money in crypto. He lost a huge chunk of his company's money first. That business trip he took before the cruise. It was an internal investigation. He was cleared, but he had to use all his savings, and then yours, to pay back a settlement to avoid jail time for some sketchy accounting practices. The cruise was supposed to be a stress relief trip before the investigation concluded. They have been quietly selling off assets for years to keep up appearances and pay off a pile of private, undisclosed debt. The sheer scale of the deception left me breathless. It wasn't just a divorce scare or a simple gambling problem. My father had been living on the brink of financial disaster, possibly even facing criminal charges, and had actively stolen my future to bail himself out of his own catastrophic mistakes. The luxury cruise was not a romantic farewell. It was a desperate, celebratory binge because he had temporarily evaded a much worse fate. The $76,000 was never a loan. It was hush money for his personal failures, dressed up as a college fund. This final truth didn't just hurt, it brought absolute clarity. I realized that my parents, particularly my father, were fundamentally incapable of prioritizing anyone or anything over their own immediate need to maintain their image and escape consequences. They hadn't just made a mistake, they were living a life defined by lies and financial recklessness. I called my father the next morning. I didn't greet him. "You're facing foreclosure, aren't you?" I asked, my voice calm and ice cold. The silence on the line was the only answer I needed. "How much do you owe to save the house?" I continued. He mumbled a number, around $40,000. He started his usual spiel, the promises, the "we're so sorry," the "we'll pay you back." "Stop," I interrupted. "Don't apologize. Just listen. The Aurora Fund has $30,000 right now. I have $2,000 in my personal savings. That's $32,000. It's not enough to save your house, but it's enough to buy you time." He sounded relieved, almost triumphant. "Oh, Maya, thank you. You're saving us. We can put a down payment on the payment plan." "No," I cut in, my voice sharp. "I am not saving you. I am closing the account." "What?" "I am withdrawing the full balance," I explained. "I will be using that $32,000 to transfer out of state tech, not to NYU, because that dream is dead, but to a smaller, reputable film school closer to the West Coast where I can get a better education and start my career immediately." I paused, letting the finality of my next statement sink in. "As for the remaining $44,587.82 you still owe me under the agreement, I am forgiving the debt," my father sputtered, completely thrown off. "Forgiving? Maya, why? We'll pay it, I promise. We'll keep driving. We'll work." "You won't," I said, my voice firm. "You will always find a new emergency, a new secret debt, a new crisis to prioritize over me. I am done being your creditor. I am done waiting for you to fix a mistake you created. I am done with the obligation that ties me to your reckless life." This was my final powerful act of separation. By forgiving the debt, I was simultaneously acknowledging that I would never get the money back and completely cutting the financial cord that bound us. The debt wasn't a punishment for them. It was an obligation for me. An obligation to continue interacting with people who had profoundly hurt me. "This is not forgiveness, Dad," I stated clearly. "This is me buying my freedom from you. I am taking the money I have, moving across the country, and closing this chapter permanently. You can keep your house, or you can lose it. That is your consequence, not mine." I hung up before he could respond. I withdrew the money, applied to a new school, and moved 3 weeks later. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I only contacted Aunt Carol, promising to keep her updated. When I started my new school, I was working twice as hard, managing my student loans and facing the world completely alone. But I felt an immense sense of peace. I had traded the security of a false family for the absolute terrifying freedom of the truth. My parents? They managed to hold on to their house for a few more months before the inevitable foreclosure. I heard about it from Aunt Carol. They moved into a smaller, rented apartment and continued their cycle of blame and broken promises. I never heard a sincere apology, nor did I ever see the $44,587.82 again. But I didn't need it. I was in film school, finally building the life I wanted, using the money I had clawed back. The most valuable lesson I learned wasn't about film or finance. It was about trust. I learned that sometimes the only way to win against a lifelong lie is to walk away from the people who told it, take what little you have left, and start over in silence. And that quiet, absolute freedom, that was worth more than $80,000. It was priceless. Thank you for listening to this difficult confession. We are so grateful to share these stories with you. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments section below.